spinal, extension, and flexion. So for this exercise, we're set up in an all fours position. Just notice the knees are below the hips and the hands are below the shoulders. Then from here, very simply, you're going to extend your spine as much as possible and then flex your spine as much as possible. Important to note during this that you'll see the curvature in my spine is quite uniform in that there's not a particular hinge point, which is common with some people. So you want to try and get an even amount of flexion throughout the spine and not get it all from one area, which is a common problem. Really important also that the elbows stay locked out throughout and ensure that we're getting our mobility all the way through the spine from tailbone into mid-back, upper back and neck. This front view just gives you a chance to look at the hand and knee width. So we have about hip to shoulder width for each. So this is a very good one for working on the mobility of the entire spine. This is also one that tends to decrease in people as they age, so a very important one to stay on top of. Hip rotations, so we're going to use the same setup position. What I'd like you to notice with this is that I'm staying very strict with my upper body and torso. I'm not rotating side to side and I'm not bending my elbows. The only thing that's moving is my hip rotating around in the socket, and you'll notice I'm going both directions. So I've just changed and now gone the other direction. Again, it's very important to note upper body stays square, low back stays square, elbows stay locked out. We're just getting as much range of motion as we can from the hip. Very important to ensure we don't rotate to the side with our body and hips to make it easier to rotate that leg. This is a thoracic or mid-back rotation exercise. So it's going to be a very similar setup position in all fours. Then we're going to take one hand and slide it underneath us along the floor as far as possible, and then rotate up and around as much as possible. The all fours position here makes it difficult to cheat by rotating our hips, so we get to isolate true thoracic rotation, which is very important for what most people call shoulder turn in the golf swing. Again, very important that the support arm stays locked out straight, no bending at the elbow. So from the front on view here, you'll get to see a good example of how the hips stay square, but then there's quite a lot of rotation at the mid-back and shoulders. So shoulders rotated, hips square, and then reversing in the other direction. Again, note how the support arm is staying locked out straight and we're rotating our upper back into that side. Very simple standing hip circles, just trying to get a little bit of mobility at the hips and lower back. Going nice and gradually, very slow and controlled, not forcing the range of motion and not excessively arching the lower back. This is a good one to go into more conservatively than the other ones, as if done with too much speed or range of motion, it can be a little bit aggravating to some people. So take your time, nice and easy, but definitely a good one to try and improve your range of motion on. Next, we have side bends. So very simple, just standing with feet about shoulder or hip width apart. And then from there, nice and easy, just leaning over to one side, hold for a second, get a nice big stretch, and then to the other side. So any of these movements which are new to you or you haven't done in a while, you'll probably feel quite limited in. And it's a good idea to take those nice and easy to begin with before gradually progressing the range of motion. Shoulder rotations or shoulder circles. So this is often an area that people begin to get limited in because we never really get a chance in everyday life to get our arms up overhead or use our shoulder through a full range of motion. This is one that I often see restricted in people when I work with them as clients, and a really good one to work on. Important with these that we go very, very slow and controlled, try and get every degree of range of motion we can. You'll also notice that I have my hand on my chest, and that's there to ensure that I don't cheat and arch with my lower back and chest, and that I don't rotate to help me get my arm back further behind me. You'll also notice that if you take a look at the front view, I was clipping my ear with my bicep, which just shows that you're able to keep your arm in nice and close and you're not cheating the range of motion by going too far laterally. So very slow and controlled tempo, not using any momentum, really trying to actively work through your available range of motion. Shoulder shrugs, again, just an exercise to try and restore full range of motion at the shoulder girdle, or at least improve on what you have currently. So nice and slow and controlled, shrugging shoulders up towards ears, squeezing together and rotating around behind us as much as possible, and then repeating in the other direction. Again, very important to note the tempo on these. We're not rushing through them. There's no use of momentum. Very slow and controlled. All muscular contraction, no momentum. Ankle rotations. So people are often very limited in their ankles. And I often see a relationship between limited ankle mobility and limited hip mobility, which can create a big problem for golfers. So this is a really simple one, just very slow and controlled, trying to rotate foot one direction at the ankle as much as possible, nice and slow and controlled, and then the other direction. Just flexing and extending at the ankle, again, something that's often limited in people, and this can be very important to improve if you're trying to improve your squat technique. Tight ankles make a good squat very difficult, which may not be very important for golf, but is certainly going to be an exercise that may be useful and that you want to include in your training program. So just lateral flexion of the neck. This is one that people are often very stiff in. So you're just trying to go nice and slow and controlled, gradually lowering head towards one shoulder, ensuring that you don't hike up at the opposite side to cheat and make it easier, and then repeating to the other side. Again, just emphasizing the tempo on these, very, very slow and controlled, not rushing into anything or aggressively bouncing from side to side. Then just neck rotations, so very simple, standing up nice and tall, and rather than going side to side leaning, we're rotating. So just looking over one shoulder as far as possible, nice and slow and controlled, and then repeating in the other direction. Important on this one to ensure that the chest remains square and you don't rotate to make it easier to get in other directions. So no movement at chest, no movement at shoulders. The only thing that's moving is our head rotating. Then moving on to the wrists, which are often neglected, but can be problems for some people. So just rotating very simply at the wrist, as much range of motion as we can in each direction, ensuring that we're not cheating too much with the elbows or forearms. Then wrist cock or hinge, just down and up. Again, something never really examined, but can be very important. And then wrist flexion and extension, or bowing and cupping as most golfers would refer to it. Very simple, but again can be very important.